It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Dirty Driving.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Australian race recap. We are so thrilled. I mean, I think I'm Danny Rick level of thrilled to be back in Australia after a 2-year COVID break. It's been 1,180 days since we were last in Australia. And I kind of didn't put the pieces together, Katie, that literally the last time they were in Australia is when lockdown happened. Like, everything was set up and Seb and Kimmy flew home before the race was even canceled.
Wow, I don't think I knew that fact.
I didn't know that fact until I started really remembering the horrors that were March 2020.
Yeah, which is just, you know, we don't love to talk about March 2020 at all, nor the rest of 2020. But we'll get back to the race, I guess. We
will talk about March 2022.
Yeah, we'll talk about March 2022. Okay, so this race was at midnight for us, and it was well worth the stay up to watch. I will fully be honest and say I did take a little 15-minute power nap in the middle of the race, but I woke up just in time to see the ending. And it was wonderful. I rewatched it today, but we had 3 safety cars, 3 DNFs, a grand slam for Charles Leclerc, a first podium in the Merc for Georgie, 5th and 6th place for McLaren, and Alex Albon ran 57 laps on one set of tires. It was a race.
I mean, Sunday was wild. I'm sorry. Saturday night at midnight was wild. If you had told me 10 years ago when I was like a freshman in college, I would be spending my Saturday nights at midnight waiting for Formula One to start, I would have said, I don't know who you think I am. But this was well worth being up at midnight. In fact, I'm pretty impressed that I made it the whole race and then I made it through the entire post-race show and did not go to bed until 3:30. So, I'd like to say I deserve some sort of award. Not a grand slam like Charles, but I'm thinking something else.
Yeah, you get an award for something because the race ended. I didn't even get to watch the podiums because F1 TV had their little mess up. And I hit the remote and turned over and went right to bed.
She's like, I'm done. I'm done.
I'm like, oh, that was so lovely. We love to see what just happened. We love a Charles Leclerc win. I am now content, and I will sleep, and I will dream peacefully. And I did.
That's ridiculous. I was way too excited at the end. I was like, let's go. Let's do it. Next weekend? And then I was like, shit, not next weekend.
No.
We have to, I cannot keep getting distracted. I really need to get into it because if I don't, it's just going to be me talking about how great it was and never actually talking about what was so great about it. Let's talk about the circuit. So we had some track changes. We talked about it a little bit at the end of last week's episode, but before we get into this week's episode, let's just quickly do a little reminder. We had 2 years off, like Katie and I mentioned. In those 2 years, we know that Danny Rick had a little bit of say in it. He's hinted at it. But the track was changed. We had turns widened. So turns 1, 3, 6, 13, and 15 were all widened. The goal was to change the fact that historically it's been a really difficult circuit to overtake. So having that extra room in those turns, they thought was going to allow for the extra ability to overtake. Hint, hint. It was a pretty exciting race. We saw some great overtakes. It worked. Additionally, turn 13 had an extension of the straight before the turn. On top of that, I was about to say additionally again, and that was going to bother me. The original turns 9 and 10 were a chicane. That chicane was deleted. It was removed. And instead we have a faster complex that would be a third DRS zone because the track had planned to have 4 of those. Ultimately on Sunday, we would only have 3. I'll get to that in a moment. But the goal was to have like a fast complex along the lake. Finally, the track also had a widening of the pit lane to allow for an increased speed limit from 60 kph to 80 kph in the pit lane. Let's talk about those DRS zones, because let me tell you, I didn't really know there was going to be 4 DRS zones until like Monday of last week when I looked at the circuit map, and I was like, holy mac and cheese balls. This is going to be bonkers. They're going to have 4 of these bitches. What is going to happen? And then Sunday morning, FIA race director Niles Wittich announced that they would be removing the 3rd DRS zone, and there would only be 3 for the remainder of Saturday, FP3 and qualifying all of Saturday and Sunday. So the DRS zone 3 was the zone between turns 8 and 9. It had been added for this weekend. Ultimately, it was removed, and they said it was for safety reasons. So lots of track changes. I think they were overall really successful, and Sunday was just like bang out exciting. Not that Friday and Saturday weren't, but Sunday definitely took the cake.
Yeah, and something else that Megan and I thought would be interesting to mention was one thing that happened over the winter break was obviously all of the rule changes came out, but one in particular was the change in the safety car procedure, which we have now dubbed the Max Verstappen safety car rule, which basically states, if you want to go and read it yourself, it's Article 55.14, and it's in Section 5.1, if you're so enthralled to go and read that yourself. But it says, no erratic acceleration or braking, nor any maneuver which is likely to endanger other drivers or impede the restart. So that basically means that Max can't do his little back and forth, fast, slow, accelerate, decelerate, juke out that he tries to do. And on lap 6 of this race, he was actually reminded of that by his race engineer saying, don't forget about the new rules, because we did see 3 safety car restarts, 2 between Charles and Max. And then just a couple other things that I noted that were cool this weekend, following the weekend, that I wanted to share before we got into it was Charles Leclerc now leads the Drivers' Championship by a larger margin than anyone did during any point of the 2021 season. So he has 34 points in the lead. Hamilton followed Russell home in P4, and the Mercedes team were the top scorers of this race with 27 points. So we're seeing some good points come out of them, even though, they're stuck in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, depending on the weekend. And then one other thing that I wanted to note was Esteban Ocon took P7 for Alpine, and he's actually finished in the top 7 in all 3 races this year. And I feel like he's one driver that we don't talk a lot about. And so I felt that was important to say, because credit is due where credit is deserved. And I think he deserves a little credit for his 2022 season so far.
I definitely don't give Esteban enough credit. I know that's that is a fault of mine. I don't know why I don't like the dude that much. I don't know when that started.
I feel like I might have influenced that heavily when we first started getting into F1.
If anyone wants to know, that pause, if you're not watching the video, is me just making these horrible faces about I don't really know why I don't like him. I really don't know. There's something about the dude I don't really love. I still support him. He does deserve the credit, though. He's having a great year. The Alpines look good this weekend, except for, Alonso. But we'll get to Fernando. I feel like we're jumping the gun.
We'll get to Fernando.
Yeah, let's just dive in. Let's dive in. I got a lot about Friday and Saturday. Normally I like to keep it short. Katie, jump in where you want to, but we got to talk about Friday and Saturday. Because when I tell you 2 years without Australia has led to an Australian weekend that was, how shall I say, fucking wild. I'm just going to say that. Let's just go there. So let's talk Friday. Carlos Sainz went fastest in FP1. On softs, Charles Leclerc went fastest in FP2. So again, the Ferraris topped both practice sessions on Friday. Right behind them were the Red Bulls, though. So it was another Ferrari and Red Bull dominated practice day. When you look at their actual pace, the two teams had found pace and found their ability to be a threat to one another in two different spots. The Ferraris had the pace in the slow to medium speed turns, corners. Wow, can't say words. Whereas the Red Bulls had it in the straights, particularly that third DRS zone, which would go away after Friday, which I think definitely hurt their pace on Saturday in qualies, and then would again hurt them on Sunday. But Red Bull also had the pace in the high-speed corners. Beyond that, beyond those four drivers juking it, that's not the word I wanted to use, wrestling it for topping the charts at the, wow, I'm like struggling for words here. Beyond those four drivers fighting to be the fastest on Friday, there were a lot of key moments beyond that. In FP1, Sebastian Vettel ended early when his Aston Martin had smoke coming out. So we had another wonderful Sebastian Vettel as Fireman Seb moment. But more importantly, we had Sebastian Vettel rides a scooter around the track moment. I mean, incredible. Could possibly be in the top 5 moments of the weekend for me. The images of him with his hands up that were photoshopped into the MotoGP races had me laughing so hard that I couldn't breathe at one point.
Yeah, I was just about to say the memes that came out of that moment were incredible.
The fact that most people were like, I bet he wants to be in the MotoGP race on the scooter rather than in the Aston Martin. I was laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. Not even a lie, I was wheezing. I think it was 100% worth the €5,000 fine for using like an unauthorized vehicle on a track while the track was still live. We're going to talk about that fine. I know Katie's going to ask me about it. I just have a feeling she's going to ask about my thoughts. But it was a great Sebastian Vettel just, again, being rogue. He was wearing his wedding ring. That was another moment when his hands were up in the air. Everyone saw that he was wearing his wedding ring after the FIA was like, no unnecessary jewelry in the car. So chaotic is best to start the weekend. FP2, just as insane. Here, we had a Stroll incident that red flagged the session when a piece of his Aston Martin, the Aston Martin wheel cover, flew off with 10 minutes left to go. So Aston Martin's just causing utter chaos. Additionally, in FP2, we learned that 4 drivers had taken a new power unit. Norris, Vettel, Yuki Tsunoda, and Fernando Alonso. For Yuki and Fernando, that is their 3rd power unit of the car in the 3rd round of the year. It is 1,000% going to be a problem in terms of allocation for the year, and there are going to be grid penalties coming for them sooner rather than later. I'm not kidding you. Yuki and Fernando are the Valtteri Bottas of the year. They're going to have like a pile of used power units in their backyard by the end of the year. Additionally, on Friday, a couple of key things to note. It was very clear that the Haas pace was off compared to their performance in the last 2 weekends, or the last 2 race weekends. There were a lot of questions, different engine mode, what was going on in the car, different fuel. It was weird to see them in the back. This is going to be a weird statement for me. It was weird to see the Haas at the back of the pack after Bahrain and Jeddah. And finally, in terms of Friday, the Alpines looked quick. Alonso was 4th fastest in FP2, and he was quickest in that middle sector where we had that DRS zone 3. Then let's talk Saturday. Like we said, overnight, we had the decision to remove that third DRS zone between turn 8 and turn 9, which came out. The race director put that out. Niles Wittich put it out on Saturday morning. FP3 came up first. And again, we continue just the Aston Martin disaster weekend. Vettel went into the wall in turn 10. Stroll had a crash in turn 11. And poor mechanics. Poor those mechanics, because it left the entire Aston Martin garage scrambling to make literal magic happen to get those cars ready for qualifying. I mean, insanity. After everything that happened on Friday, to then have that happen in FP3, like a dumpster fire that now has just been like put into a tornado, was Aston Martin's Friday and Saturday. Additionally, we had Verstappen struggling, which I think is a result of him not having that DRS3 zone, which is where he was gaining a lot of pace, but he also spun in turn 13 on medium tires when he was trying to set a fast lap. In FP3, surprise, 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 we had a McLaren go fastest. Lando Norris was fastest, and Daniel Ricciardo was 6th fastest, and Alonso was 4th fastest. So we saw some fast Alpines again, and really the McLarens were showing pace, which I was very happy to see. I was straight up wilding about it. But before we get to qualifying, Katie, we need to pause. Are you ready for what we're about to talk about?
I am fully prepared to talk about what I know you're about to bring up.
The press conference craziness.
Yes. I think every single one of them, I don't know if it's the Australian heat. I don't know if it is the jet lag. I don't know if it's the fact that they haven't been there in that many years, but they were all on one. For lack of a better term, they were all on one.
Let me run through them and then we'll just go for it. I think I run through all the incidents and we just talk about it. Okay, first we got Checo talking about Max naked. We got Yuki talking about his relationship with Pierre being like a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Then we got Carlos and Charles talking about showering together. We have Lando and Daniel talking about hugging and ass grabbing. As a result of the FIA cracking down on fire-resistant underwear, we have Pierre Gasly saying, "Let the FIA check my ass, let them check my cock." And yes, he did use that word. I'm only quoting the man. Finally, and this is the one that killed me. The cock line killed me, but I'm also going to say the FIA cracking down on jewelry, and then Lewis and Max joking about it. And Lewis being like, "Man, your nipple piercing." And Max saying, "Do you want to see it again?"
Again. Keyword again. Do you want to see it again?
Keyword again.
Yeah. Pretty incredible. I would have loved to be A, in that crowd, and B, one of the commentators, because I said it once and I'll say it again. They were on one. Like, let's get all the frat boys out together in Australia.
I mean, this was insane. Like, one of these comments would have made pressers amazing for the weekend, but the fact it was all of this is just magic. Like, literal magic for the fans. I mean, it got even better, Katie, because after the race, did you see the video of Lando and Daniel comparing their sweat stains?
No, I missed that. I missed it.
I was like, it must be the heat. It must be the heat. They're not, or the fact that they haven't been on the Australian air in so long.
It was incredible. I loved watching every single one of the clips. I loved watching the audience's reaction to these statements. It was just, I hope every weekend is like this going forward. I feel like, and I don't know, maybe it's just because it's the third race of the season, but the pressure is off this season. There's not this huge drama, who's going to win the championship, la 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 la. It's just like, we're having fun again and we're going racing again.
I mean, I love it. The atmosphere is just incredible.
It's incredible.
It's so fun. Oh, you know what else I missed? the fan, the Carlos and Charles were at the Ferrari. It must have been their like hype session. I don't know what you call them for Formula. I'll be honest, I don't know what you call them. Like where the drivers stand on a stage and all the fans are there. And someone raised their hand and they were like, "Hey Charles, how are you so beautiful?" It was a male. It was a male who asked Charles, "How did you get so beautiful?" And he's like, he just started laughing. And there was a lot of talk about, if a woman had asked the question, the reaction would have been different, which I completely agree. But I don't want to talk about, that's important to discuss. But what I want to talk about is if you go back and watch that clip, if you look at Carlos Sainz looking at Charles, his face is just like priceless in that moment. It is so like, I just love them together. Like, I don't know why. Maybe it's because we talked about him last week, but that clip of Carlos just beaming at Charles, I'm like, they're amazing.
They are probably my favorite duo this year, hands down.
As teammates, potentially. I don't know. I'm not picking my favorite partnership yet. We got a lot of season left to go. Okay, let's break down qualifying, because qualifying was just as crazy. In fact, someone would argue it was probably crazier. I think the only way to talk about this qualifying session, because so much happened, is to start with like the end result and kind of like work our way back through the key moments, because a lot of shit happened. We had a Lestrol, which is what I'm calling the incident, a Lestrol moment. We had Alonso's just fucking painful incident, just Alonso's sheer pain. We had Verstappen bitching, and we had a DQ. So let's start with the result and work our way backwards. Charles Leclerc was on pole position. Love to see it. He would line up next to Max Verstappen. And in third, we would have Perez. Interesting here is that there was some questions on whether or not Perez was actually going to start in third place, because he was summoned to the stewards over allegedly not slowing under yellow flags. Ultimately, there would be a decision to not take any action. Interesting to note. I will, I'm not going to comment on that, because I want to see how this transpires over the next couple of races and another couple of incidents like this. And then I will comment holistically. Behind him is Lando Norris, like showing up to qualifying, putting the McLaren that was a piece of shit the last two races in fourth. Behind him was Hamilton, Russell, and then Ricciardo, hometown hero, again, putting the piece of shit McLaren into the top 10. They both made it into Q3. It was amazing. And then in ninth was Carlos Sainz.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That was an ouch moment.
Epic ouch moment. And he was pissed. Did you watch his interview at all?
I did, yeah.
He was irate, is the word I would like to use.
I mean, like, anytime someone shoves it into the wall and ruins qualifying, I give them every right to be as pissed off as they want, because it's not their fault that they couldn't put a time up. It's different when, if, the Aston Martin engineers couldn't have gotten the cars ready and Vettel and Stroll weren't able to set times, that's on the team. But it's on someone else. So I give them every right to be as pissed off as however the fuck they want to be, because, like, fuck, man. Your quality's ruined.
Well, really, the only reason I was talking about how pissed he was is because literally a week ago I was talking about how he has such a cool, calm, and collected temperament. And here we are now talking about this interview where he is, like, visibly pissed. So you know that he was not just, like, normal person pissed. He was, like,
exponentially
mad.
Yeah.
Which was ruined by Alonso's Q3 incident. And let me tell you, Alonso in P10... This was not Alplan. This was Alpine. And yes, I did steal that from somebody. I didn't come up with that. I'm not that funny or witty or clever. I like to pretend like I am. So Alonso was on a flying lap in Q3, and he was purple in the first sector, and he was going green in the second sector when the engine just shut off. It couldn't change gears. I don't know if what the correct word is, wouldn't or couldn't on that one. I didn't do enough research on it, I'll just be honest. But that's just shitty. Because potentially if he had put up a good last sector, he could have been on provisional pole, which would have been insane and amazing and impressive. And he all weekend had been showing great times. And this is kind of where I go back to, we had talked about this a little bit earlier in this in our episodes this season, that this year Renault's engines, they had decided to prefer performance over reliability. And so the question is here is maybe the reliability is something they should have leaned into a little bit more and not swung too hard to performance. So definitely some Alpine for Alonso there. In Q2, we had Max Verstappen bitching about the sun. Had to note that there. And then Valtteri Bottas ended his Q3 appearance streak. He had been in Q3 for 100 plus times, so he still is a Centurion. But that streak started back in Abu Dhabi in 2016. So it was absolutely heartbreaking for me to see that end. But we still love him. VBs, I love him. He loves coffee. I love him. Q1 is where things were really the most spicy, I'd like to say. Turn 11, right at the beginning, Latifi ran wide and he went to the gravel. And let me tell you, when he did that, I was like, shit, Latifi's going into the wall and we're going to red flag it. Like, here we go. But he didn't. And then just a couple of laps later, we had a Stroll moment that red flagged it. Both of them would be eliminated in Q1, and the incident would be investigated by the stewards. Ultimately, they would decide that Lance Stroll was responsible and would drop him 3 grid positions and give him 2 penalty points for a total of 7 in this year. Latifi, essentially what happened in the incident, Nicholas Latifi pulled off to the left to let a ton of cars by. The last one of them was Stroll. Stroll at the exit of turn 5 was not accelerating. He was in the middle of the track, and so Latifi tried to go around him. Stroll just fucking wasn't looking and drove into him, made contact, and there we go. Another Aston Martin driver is on a scooter. The only positive of this red flag is that it would allow the Aston Martin engineers additional time to be able to finish getting Sebastian Vettel's car ready so that he could go out on track and try to put up a time. Unfortunately, ultimately, he would not be able to set a time that would get him out of Q1 and would be eliminated. And finally, after this very long practice and qualifying conversation, which has been the longest one I've ever done, we had Alex Albon, who would have engine problems at the end of Q1 after being eliminated. Ultimately, he would have to push the Williams back to the pits, but it would just get even shittier for him because he would be disqualified from qualifying because there would not be enough fuel left to do the fuel sample tests because you needed 1 liter of fuel to sample. And so Williams would have to petition the stewards to allow him to start because he would be disqualified and he would start P20th. So yeah, that's it. Sorry it was so long, everyone, but blame Australia. Friday and Saturday were a lot.
Oh, which brings us to the race. The race on Saturday night that started at midnight for Megan and I, where we had a beautiful, clean getaway for Charles. George Russell came down the inside and ended up in 5th. Hamilton got ahead of Perez. Both Mercedes were ahead of the McLarens, with Carlos having a horrible start to the race. He slipped down in the grid to 14th and was like vying for positions and then kept tumbling up and down a little bit. And at the end of the first lap, we had Charles Leclerc 0.6 of a second ahead of Max Verstappen. So we knew that we were going to watch the two of them battle all race. I'll get into a little bit more of what went on with Max later on, but it was a pretty good start. I was happy with it. Following that, we are just a couple laps in where we had Carlos Sainz beach his car into the gravel. We had a yellow flag and it was our first DNF of the race. It was literally lap 2 for the retirement, and it ended his 17 race point streak and a 31 race finishing streak, which were both the longest active streaks in F1. So, I don't know. I think he just fucking shunted it, and I was pissed because I had money on him. I had him to win the race, and whatever. It's fine.
I'm pissed because he's on my fantasy.
He's on my fantasy team, too, so it's just
shush. You've got Charles and you've got Ferrari, so...
You know what? You can pick whoever you want to pick, Megan. I pick strong. She's just pissed I'm still beating her, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. I did notice a lot of little mistakes this race. One came from Vettel on lap 11, and he put it in the gravel, but lots of drivers had issues running off and giving up simple positions. I thought about listing all of them, but there were honestly too many to go through, but tons of running it through the grass, running it off. It was just, I don't know. Did you notice that it was more this race than any other race that I've ever watched?
It was a little like ticky-tacky about losing positions, and at one point I was kind of like, is it because the cars they can overtake?
I couldn't decide if it
something else.
I couldn't decide if it was the track and that it was just things had changed, or if we were just struggling this weekend with making little mistakes. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that a little later as well. And then Vettel would go on to hit the wall and retire in lap 23, giving us our second yellow flag and our second DNF. Perez had some great overtakes. This time, he's not the Minister of Defense. He's the Minister of Overtakes. In lap 10, he got around Hamilton. In lap 23, he went on the outside on Lakeside Drive, which I kept, every time they said Lakeside Drive, I kept thinking about Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. And I don't know why, but it was messing with my head so much. And so I'm glad I was able to say Lakeside Drive just then. And then in lap 30, we had Perez around Alonso up to P4 on the inside of turn 3. We thought Alonso was going to come back, but it did not happen, and Perez held the position. And then finally, around lap 36, we had Perez get around Russell for third. At one point, Russell was told that he had to think about tire management and that if it made sense to give up the place, and George was not happy about that at all, which... Go ahead, Megan.
He was peeved. I don't know what he said on the radio. I don't remember exactly what his words were, but you could hear. He was like...
It was something like that. He said something like, that's not all right with me. Or that's not what I want to hear. Or
it was like that.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's not what I want to hear.
I was like, that sounds like a Lewis Hamilton line.
Yeah, which Lewis had his line of himself, and he said that... you guys have put me in a really, he didn't say shitty position, but his message was basically like, you guys put me in a shitty position this whole race, so.
Which he has clarified what he meant by that. We can talk about that later, though.
Did you read that article?
Yeah, he, clarified what he meant about that.
Okay.
Do you want me to go into it now or later?
Yeah, sure, why not? We're on the subject.
He was just talking, well, I think a lot of people thought it came off that he was talking about being behind George Russell, which is how I took it at first. But I was like, there's no way. There's no way. He is way, way, way too supportive of George Russell. I was like, no. There's no way. And he was more referring to the fact that the engine was overheating.
Yeah. See, I never once when he said that, obviously I heard it live, but then thinking about it when I saw that article pop up, I never once thought he was saying it in regards to George. I thought it was more of like car and weekend setup that he was in a bad spot. So I'm glad he clarified that, because I'm sure some people don't think of, I know some people don't think as highly of Lewis Hamilton as I do. So.
No, he's such a supporter of George Russell. He was such a supporter of Valtteri too. Like, I'm sorry, I feel like people just think that he comes off as being like, it is only me. Like, it's only me. And I'm like, no, I firmly believe that he just wants success for him and his whole team.
Yeah. Especially this year with the position that they're in now, like team comes first right now for most teams. Which now I can talk about the Max incident, which came around lap 39. Max retired due to some car issues. He did have a little he didn't have the what's that thing called? The fire that puts a thing out? That puts a fire out?
Extinguisher?
Extinguisher, thank you. He was not the one holding the extinguisher, but he was pointing where it needed to go. And he did throw his wheel out of the car. So clearly very pissed about this retirement. Not only lost out on a podium, but points for Red Bull, and it was the third red flag and third DNF of the race. Yellow flag, excuse me. And then finally, the last thing that I wanted to note about the race, the last couple of laps were pretty calm, other than the fact that we had Alex Albon running the whole race without pitting. And if you're unaware, per the rules, you must pit at least once. So on the very last lap, the man pitted. He was in P7 and he dropped down to P10. He was able to stay ahead of Guan Yu Zhao and got a point for Williams, which is incredible because it's only his third race back in Williams. So great. It was phenomenal. I loved watching that. There was this little moment after the race. It was the post-race interviews where he and Lando were being interviewed together, and Lando was like, you should have just finished the race and taken the penalty instead. So yeah.
I kind of wanted him to do that. Just to be like,
I know.
I did
just
it.
Be like, fuck you. Yeah, I did it. I finished the whole race. I did it. Yeah. Checo's got some competition with tire management this year. That's all I got to say.
I mean, it was freaking impressive. Also,
very impressive.
I hate to admit this. I was not paying attention to the fact that he hadn't pitted until like lap 41. And I was like, Albon hasn't pitted?
Yeah, they didn't really talk about it until, so if you really weren't paying attention, you had no idea until they mentioned it. Oh, here, I got my notes right here. They mentioned it on lap 53. But that was really the first time that they drew attention to it.
Which also reminds me, something I noted is I don't think they're showing the graphic of who's pitted as often as they did last year. So realizing things like that, unless you are keeping tallies for this race, I completely miffed that Alex Albon hadn't pitted. So yeah. It was insane to me. It was so late in the race that I put it together. So that's something that really, really, really is like a negative of this new production. First off, I can't read the names. Can't read the names if I'm too far away from the TV. But second, the graphics, we need to show the pit stops a little bit more often.
Yeah. Which brings us to the ending results of the Australian Grand Prix. We had George Russell in P3, his first podium for Mercedes, and now leads his teammate Lewis Hamilton by 9 points after these first three races. Sergio Perez took second and now heads previous world champion and teammate Max Verstappen in the driver's table by 5 points. So it's kind of like all of these number two drivers are kind of getting their way this year. Hate to call them number two drivers, but we know where they stand sometimes. Which left Charles Leclerc to take a Grand Slam, which is a win, pole position, fastest lap, and leading every lap, making him only the second Ferrari driver in the last 18 years to achieve this. And all four of Charles's career F1 wins to date have come from pole position. So when Charles is on pole, bet money that he's going to win the race. Which brings us to our betting corner. I was finally able to place some bets on a race. I placed 6 and I won 5 of the 6. I went with Charles Leclerc to take fastest lap. He was not favored, but it was for plus 160. And then for the winning driver, like I mentioned earlier, I chose Carlos Sainz, which was plus 16,000. I obviously lost that one with him shunting early on in the race. Podium finish, Charles Leclerc for -400. Top 6 finish, I bet big on this one. I wanted Danny Ricciardo, and I got Danny Ricciardo. It was a +200. And then the winner for constructor, I got Ferrari, who were favored at -140. So good weekend on the betting front. We will see how next weekend goes. I'll probably place another 6 or 7, maybe even 8 bets next weekend. Part of me, like I every weekend I want to do it on first retirement, but that is just such a shot in the dark that who knows who's going to retire first. But maybe one of these weeks I'll give it a shot.
I feel like we need to do it I feel like we can at least get there should be 3 names always in the running.
Always, that we always maybe bet on. Yeah. Nicholas Latifi is definitely the one that I've got up there.
I would not have. There was no way Carlos Sainz would have even been in the top.
I had him winning the race.
Yeah, there's no way that would have even been a conclusion. So
yeah,
it was probably good you didn't put money on it. But
yeah,
maybe in 2 weeks let's just put money on Latifi.
Yeah, again, that's a complete shot in the dark. And if you're interested in starting to bet on F1, feel free to shoot us a DM. Would love to talk to you about it. I use BetUS, not affiliated by any means, but I have been enjoying it so far. So yeah. Which brings us to our fantasy wrap up. Megan, you want to?
Oh, yes. Sorry. She wants me to do it because she's leading and she wants me to have to say it.
Yeah.
So Katie is leading the entire league. Yes. Yeah, celebrate. She went with her same team. I'm not going to run through it all. It's Ferrari heavy. It's why she's doing
Ferrari
so
heavy.
well.
I'm doing well. Okay. I chose well.
I am mounting my comeback. I have moved up another place. I am now in 9th. We're not ready for Brazil, but I'm moving towards there. I'm moving into the end of the 2021. I am Lewis Hamilton on the back half of 2021. So it's coming. Yeah. It's coming. I'm having a great time with the fantasy. It's been really fun this year. It's adding a different level of intrigue to the season. And I think so in our league, we're doing it on Grid Rival, who is not the official Formula One fantasy. It's an app that we found, but they allow you to pick your talent driver if they're under a certain salary threshold. And that's really fun. So mine was Pierre Gasly this weekend, and he did really well for me. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I chose Pierre as well. He got me an extra 262 points. So Megan, your comeback, you're only about 300 points behind me. Your comeback is imminent. I feel it, which is why I'm already planning whether or not I will be switching my team up this year or this next weekend or not.
Because you're all in bed with Ferrari. So if they have one bad weekend, I'm in. If Ferrari shits the bed one weekend, I'm taking the lead.
I am in bed with Ferrari.
And then about it. And then guess what? The tides will turn. And then we could be, in a different place with this old tattoo bet. Okay, I think it's time that we get into some questions. This race, this weekend was just bananas. It's holy mac and cheese balls, in the words of the hometown hero, Danny Ricciardo. I really, really, really think we need to start off with our general race question this week. Normally we do that last, but I think we should start off with it because I really want to talk about DRS zones, Katie. So,
yeah.
Would the 4th DRS zone have made a difference? We were supposed to have 4. It would have been freaking cool to see a track with 4. It would have been wild in a race. We had a lot of overtakes. There would have been a shit ton more. But would it have made a difference in terms of Max, Charles, Alpine?
Yeah, part of me, from what Max said in the post-race where he was like, I just could not keep up with Charles, with danger or with fear of fucking my tires. I truly don't think it would have made that big of a difference for him. I mean, the car was clearly bound to fizzle out. He took the fastest lap and then it fizzled out. So I think it could have been very different leading up to that point, but I couldn't foresee Max Verstappen not having a DNF. I do think it would have made a difference in the midfield, especially with that huge DRS train we had for a while with Stroll leading. I think it definitely could have shook that up a little faster, having there been more opportunity to open up the DRS flaps and overtake.
I think it would have made qualifying different. Qualities might have been different. I think it wouldn't have necessarily prevented Fernando's, and I don't even know if I can call that an incident. Like, what do we want to call that? Like Fernando Alonso's just like unfortunate Fernando's unfortunate event. It wouldn't have changed that. The Red Bull might have, I mean, we could have seen a Verstappen pole potentially. I would have to look at the sector times on that one. I don't know. I think it would have been really, without getting into like the nitty gritty of like the data on it, I think it would have been interesting to see a race with 4 DRS zones. I would really like for them to find a way to, in a year from now, have a 4th DRS zone there so that we can compare a 2022 with 3 to a 2023 with 4. I don't know if that's possible. Truthfully, I don't really know, beyond them saying it was for safety reasons. We don't know the nitty gritty of those safety reasons, so I'd be interested if we're going to get any additional details on that. I do think it would have made a difference in the Red Bull pace. Don't know if that would have translated to anything different on Sunday, because, Max's car still would have shit the bed. It might just have happened earlier. And
yeah, it could have.
Even though Checo's race engineer said that Max's issues was not relevant to their car, if Perez was pushing, I don't know. There could have been some additional issues there too. I don't know. We still don't really know what happened to Max's car. At least I don't know what happened to Max's car.
Yeah, there was something about one of the lines bursting. I'm not sure which, but it was something to do with one of the lines bursting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do some more research on that. Which I think, like, I'm just gonna go into it. We're not gonna talk about Max without me just asking you my question. So, 2 Max Verstappen DNFs, which is the same number that he had last year in totality. And I get it's hard to compare this year, new car, new era, all that stuff. But what are your thoughts? Like, truthfully, what does this mean? I know all of the drivers are saying, like, we can't talk about the championship yet, but 3 races, 2 DNFs, every race that Max has finished, he's won. Granted, that's 1 race. So he has 100% win rate if he finishes.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with this is Red Bull needs to figure their shit out. It's clearly not Max's fault that these things are going awry. He did say, I don't even want to think about the championship right now. It's just about finishing races, which is frustrating and unacceptable. And Megan, you might be upset with me for saying this, but I think a pissed off Max Verstappen is one of the hottest things. I can't even say it without laughing
literally
at myself.
Repulsive. And the fact that you're laughing at yourself is disgusting.
Like, his power walk back, I don't know what it is, but who knows? That's how I feel about it. I'm not taking any comments about it. I will not be reading any comments about it. I'm not letting you comment on it any further. That is how I feel about it. And
if anyone would like to comment on her statement, please reach out to me. I'll comment with you on that statement because This is an issue for me, what you just said.
Whatever. We're moving past it. Okay, so, in the post-race, he claimed it was a terrible race. They had no pace. And like I said earlier, he was concerned about pushing with Charles because he was going to lose the tires. He had the easy P2, and unfortunately it was the car. That's why I say, like, it's not on Max, it's on the team as a whole. I don't think he's out of the championship at all, because halfway through the season we could see Ferrari have 3 DNFs in a row. I know I'm kind of skirting the question, but it's too early to say. All I know is that he is pissed off and he's not going to stand for this. And we've not heard much from Christian Horner either. And so I think they're tightening up their boots and getting to work and trying to figure out why they look like this and why Max's car specifically, I think, is having maybe some more issues than Checo, who was able to finish the race.
What is baffling to me is that at some point, I mean, I get that Ferrari is putting up impressive pace. They are definitely miles ahead in the championship. Charles is 34 points ahead. But beyond Ferrari, like the other 9 teams, what shakes out in terms of where those drivers and those teams stand could really be based on the reliability of the car and the ability to finish. So when George Russell made the comment, in press conferences that, you have to finish a race, that's the most important thing. I think people are making, I know that comment is being judged to be a backhanded comment against Red Bull. But I think what's more important about what he's saying is that reliability at the end of the day is what's important. The car has to cross, in the words of Will Buxton, you got to cross the line to finish the race.
Yeah, and right now Red Bull is not crossing the line with the previous world champion. And that looks pretty shitty.
Real shitty. Real shitty.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the fine, the €5,000 fine for Vettel, and his questioning of where that money goes leads us to question, where does that money really go?
Okay. 2 things. First off, €5,000 fine. That's a fucking joke. I'm sorry, if you don't want somebody to do something in a sport like Formula One, you should probably fine them more than €5,000.
But if he would have been fined for any more than that, I would have been pissed.
I also just think it was stupid. The whole thing was stupid. Reprimand him. The fine in itself is dumb. Right? But beyond that, the fact that they chose to fine him and then we're like 5,000. I'm sorry. What? So you're telling me that Max touched a rear wing of an opponent's car and that was 50? Or was that 25? I don't know. It was 25 or 50K. But
I believe it was 50.
The whole reason for the fine is that technically that track is still live. And so what Vettel did was dangerous because theoretically there are still people potentially on that track. And so it is unsafe. So you're telling me that safety is only €5,000, but touching a car is 50? It feels just kind of like a joke. Second part of your question, Katie, is where the fuck does that money go? I intentionally didn't research this. When we talked about this, I was like, should I start looking into where this money goes? And I was like, no. Because the whole point is, where does it go? The fine.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to research this. The FIA should tell us where this money is going.
And if it funnels back into the money that the teams receive at the end of the year, then I'm fine with that. If it goes into someone's pocket, I'm not fine with that. It should go, or better yet, maybe it should go to charity.
It probably should go to charity if we're honestly talking about things. It should go to charity. Okay, next question, and I'm going to circle back to Red Bull, and this one's going to be quick, but I just have to mention it. Checo's radio message, Katie, he straight up asked, "Are you still awake?" And his response, or not his response, race engineer's response was jet lag kicking in. Do they even know Checo was still in the race?
This, and maybe I'm interpreting this wrong, but this hurt my soul. I was like, do you even know that you still have a car out there, or is your prize boy done? So you've forgotten that Checo is in P2. I don't know. Maybe like I'm very interested. I didn't have a chance to do it today, but I'm gonna go take a look at his radio messages to see if there was anything prior to that. Like, did Checo ask a question and not get a response? Or, like, was it just radio silence for a while? But, I don't know. I thought it was hilarious. I typed it up in my notes. It was good. It was good.
I really hope that I'm misinterpreting this as just a misinterpretation, but it really felt exactly how you just mentioned it. It felt like, do you even give a shit about him? Yeah. But I've thought that for a while.
All right, my last question was, Lance Stroll did not receive a penalty for pushing Valtteri wide, but did receive a penalty for weaving on the straights. The FIA clarified the pushing wide rule this year, but failed to penalize Stroll. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, because if you're going to change the rule and you're going to get him for that weave on the straight, but you're not going to get him for the pushing wide, why did we fix that rule?
Because the FIA is consistently inconsistent. The FIA said no investigation necessary. Makes no sense. You change a rule, you should probably follow the rule. Isn't that the point of the rules? But the FIA kind of doesn't really even care what their own rules are. We're abundantly aware of that. Kevin Magnussen was summoned to the stewards for allegedly pushing Fernando Alonso off the track. Ultimately, no further action was taken. They both said that it was hard racing. At the end of all of this, I'm not even surprised. Consistently inconsistent, consistently inconsistent, inconsistently consistent is the FIA. That should be their motto, in fact, when it comes to Formula One. But I think this confirms, or even maybe predicts, that at some point in this year, or maybe it's just a premonition that at some point in this year, they're actually going to enforce this rule, and it is going to cause an uproar. And it's going to be at a time that it costs someone
dearly,
because, and everyone's going to be mad because they haven't enforced it all year.
Yeah. I'm with you on the consistently inconsistent, and I think what shocked me most, and the reason why I wanted to bring it up, is because it shocked the commentators who, you know, are there every race and know what's going on way more than we will ever know. And so, yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I was shocked at what they said, and I was shocked that nothing had happened when they had already nicked him for the weaving, and that no investigation necessary versus summoned to the stewards. So consistent. That's what we're asking for. We're asking for consistency, and I don't know if we're ever going to get it.
Also, like, he probably needs to get his fucking shit together after this weekend.
Yeah. Lance.
Yes, Lance. Well, the FA
Yes.
has needed to get its shit together for a while.
For a while, but Lance specifically.
Lance specifically.
All right, Megan, tell me about your winner.
We've talked about it a little bit. I'm really excited about this guy. I mean, I'm so excited. I'm not going to go into too much detail. We talked about it a little bit. But my winner of the week the race weekend is Alex Albon. I mean, the man drove 57 laps on one set of tires after starting from the back of the grid, after he was disqualified, after his car stopped and he had to push it into the pits. And he got some points for Williams. Full stop, period, done. That's all I'm going to say. It was a great weekend for him. I think it shows what a great driver he is. I think it shows his ability on track, his ability to manage tires, and his ability to, over a race weekend, to take the punches and to roll with it, and not just roll with it, but to push back on them and to overcome them. And that takes a lot of mental stamina, especially in your third race back after being out last season, after being pushed out of Red Bull. I'm gonna jump into my loser before I let you do both, because I think it's a good comparison of the two, because both teams have Mercedes power units. So we see Alex Albon having great success in his Williams, but my loser is Aston Martin. Again, I feel like I don't have to say a whole lot here. It's probably pretty evident that they are my loser of the week. I've talked about how horrible of a weekend that they had. But what the icing on the cake was, at the point that Sebastian Vettel, after the weekend, is like, the car was a little too much for me to handle today. What? Seb can handle anything in my mind. And so for him to say that means that car really needs a lot of work. And he knows it needs a lot of work. And Lance knows it needs a lot of work. And now, I mean, they have a lot of work that they need to put in the next 2 weeks if they're going to have any shot at success in Imola.
Yeah, I think a lot about Papa Stroll and his 5-year plan. And I wonder if this is a part of his 5-year plan, which I know it's not, but I've been thinking about it a while.
There's no way that this is in Papa Stroll's 5-year plan. In fact, I'm really scared for Mike Crack.
Yeah.
That man I'd be hiding. If I was Mike Crack. Honestly, I think if I was Lance Stroll, I'd be hiding from my father. I would have blocked his number. I've been like, immediately races over, find my dad's number, block. I would have blocked him on social media too. I would have been like, I'm taking the other private plane home. Can't be on that plane with my dad.
That's too good.
Sorry,
right, my
Dad.
winner was McLaren. We got both cars in the points, Lando in P5, Daniel in P6. They have not finished higher than 7th in the opening 2 races. So I have this jittery feeling that Megan and I may be back in business as winning McLaren fans. And Danny Rick scored his first points of 2022 at his home race. So all in all, a great weekend for them. I have good vibes going forward. I just got a new McLaren sweatshirt, so I think that brought some good juju into the house as well, but I am excited for them. Which brings me to my loser. Again, we've talked about him a little bit so far, but Fernando Alonso, Alpine this weekend, I also saw another one that was Spain without the S is pain, which I thought was pretty harsh. I'm pretty sure that was ESPN F1, to be completely honest. But yeah, he crashed out in Q3 of qualies. He burned his tires out following that DRS train that was led by Stroll, which meant he had to pit for the second time. And He also kind of got a little roasted by Lando Norris in the post show, which I can't remember who they were talking to. I think it was who's the Haas reserve driver? Pitafaldi. And they were like, oh, you'll have your time soon. I'm pretty sure it was him. It could have been someone completely different. Don't quote me on this. And Lando said, well, after the day that Alonso had, your time might not be too far gone. So I had to.
Which is even more amazing because Alonso just was like, I'm going to stay for 2 or 3 more years. Like, he said that like a week ago.
Yeah, so I thought that was the perfect loser for my weekend.
Ooh, Daniel. I mean, not Daniel. Lando Norris with
Lando
Norris with the sick burn.
Yeah, Lando was feeling hot in the post-race interviews, and maybe that's what happens when you finish the race in P5 after not doing so hot.
Literally, he was hot, Katie. Him and Daniel compared their sweat. They were like, look at my sweat.
All right, and our honorable mention of the week are the Aston Martin engineers, because how the hell did they get Seb out there in the last 2 minutes of qualies to set a lap time? I was thoroughly impressed. I'm going to speak for Megan. She was also thoroughly impressed, and that's why we chose the Aston Martin engineers as our honorable mention of the week. They were phenomenal.
Our hidden gem of the week is, I picked this one, I couldn't not pick this one, is Daniel Ricciardo being home. His mom was there, his dad was there, his nephew was there. The photo of Danny Rick fist bumping his nephew Isaac brought tears to my eyes, because I can't imagine not going home for that long, because I was lucky enough to spend most of the pandemic around family, around friends, but for him to not be able to come home, and then for him to finally come home, for him to finally get to race at home on a track that's new and fun and in front of his family, and to finally score points, incredible. Also, there was just like the cutest picture of his nephew and his dad, and again, tears to my eyes. I was just like beaming. He was beaming. Seeing how happy he was. I mean, he's always happy. So the fact that like you could visibly notice a difference in his happiness levels was just, it was the gem. We knew it was going to be the gem. We knew this weekend was going to be incredible seeing it, and it was awesome.
I want to make one last Charles Leclerc comment, because he's just done so well. Every driver to have taken a Grand Slam since 2011 has gone on to win the title that year. So will Charles Leclerc keep the momentum going? We'll have to survive the next 2-week break before Imola to find out. Join us next week as we deep dive into one of the teams. And from what I hear, it's going to be about one of the comeback kids.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.